A couple years ago, I was asked by the Dean to chair a task force on globalization, which we did. And one of the outcomes of that was we came up with a definition of what a global engineer is, what the traits of a global engineer are. And there's a whole bunch of things. So everything on the left hand, we're not going to go through item by item, but everything on the left hand side are things that you're probably used to seeing before. A whole bunch of technical skills, a whole bunch of non-technical skills which have been recognized to be important over the last decade or so, including communication skills and very appropriate to today's group, leadership skills and teamwork skills. But what we came up with was a whole bunch of other things related to global collaboration, what might be referred to as the flattening of the world, the interconnectedness of the world, and the recognition that in your future, you're most likely going to be working in some sort of a global context. You need skills in order to work with people from around the world. You need to understand them culturally, you need to understand their backgrounds, and just understanding very diverse points of view. So I'm not going to go through all that, but this is at least in a very academic sense, how we define what a global engineer was. But let me try to animate this discussion with the topic of water. And just I'll use this kind of as a case study to help you understand maybe some of the things that I mean. But remember, I'm just talking about the right ear of the elephant. There's a lot more to it than this. And so some of you might have, well, look at my order. That's me in front. This is a river somewhere. This is the Horton River. On my way to the Arctic Ocean about 2.5 years ago. There's no lack of water in Canada. That water was drinkable. It was beautiful, tons and tons of it. And even down here, the coast to the U.S. border, we have lots of water. And we don't have an issue with water. But if all you look is, well, if the only place you look is Canada, if the only place you look is Toronto, you would get a very misrepresented view of the issue of water around the world. You would get a very narrow view. So the world actually looks like this. So this is a map that I pulled from somewhere on the web. The freshwater resources per capita for different parts of the world. In Canada, we have the most, 10,000 cubic meters per year or more. There are parts of the world that have less than 1,000. So not everybody has as much water as we do. And it's something that we tend to take for granted. And plus, there are now increasing water stresses in different parts of the world because of population growth. And that population growth leads to increased industrial activity, increased agricultural activity, increased demand for water. Climate change is also leading to additional stresses on water. Okay? So if you just wanted to make money, you would look at this and say, well, there's lots of opportunities for water-related technologies. And Dalton McGuinty just recognized that. As of yesterday, he just made this announcement that Ontario's economy is hinging Ontario's economic growth in the future on two things. One, clean water technologies, and number two, education. So the Clean Water Technologies Act, the Water Opportunities Act, as I said, this is direct from this from the news release. It's designed to take advantage of the province's expertise in clean water technology. And we already employ 22,000 in this sector, which is worth $400 billion a year. All of this, all that clean water technology, is actually not going to meet needs in Ontario. As I said, we don't need water. We have all the water we need. We're turn on the tap and you see that. But around the world, there's lots of opportunities. So if you're interested in just making money, looking around the world is going to help you out, not just in your own backyard. But there's another aspect to it, and this is the altruistic aspect that Mike also referred to. There's a large fraction of the world that actually don't have enough clean water and don't have access to clean drinking water. Some of the technologies that we will sell to the world, that Ontario will sell to the world, will help some of them, the ones who can afford to pay. But there's also a lot of people who can't afford to pay. So this is an example, actually this slide should have been a couple of slides earlier. It's Lake Chad in Africa. This is an impact of climate change. It's very, very famous satellite images. 1963, that's how much water, that's how big Lake Chad is. By the year 2001, the lake has shrunk by a huge amount. And there were millions of people living in that region, who have been displaced. They don't have the water anymore. So there's a lot of people around the world who don't have water. And we look at, we're used to just turning on the tap and clean water comes out. It's just, again, it's amazing how much we take that for granted. On average, Americans, North Americans, use about 400 liters of water per day per person. The United Nations is talking about 20 liters per day per person as a minimum level required for what's called water security. And a huge fraction of the world don't have that. We spend about 50 liters a day flushing toilets per person. Okay? And even when there's water, and that's a picture of Lake Koka, about 100 miles outside of Ethiopia, which has been a source for drinking water for millions of people. And is now completely contaminated because in the process of trying to grow their economy, their tanning industry and their flower industry have used chemicals that have polluted that lake. And those are now super toxic algae. So even though they have tons of water, there's nothing that they can drink. Okay? And there'll be Arab states that have lots of seawater, but nothing that they can drink without some sort of processing. Okay? So again, staying on the altruistic part of this, one of the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, and if you don't know what that is, look that up. That's one of the most important global things that's going on in the world right now. This was something that was stated in the year 2000 And one of the goals was to halve, by the year 2015, the proportion of the population in the world that do not have sustainable access to safe drinking water and basic sanitation. So that was 2000, which is adopted by 189 countries and signed by 147 heads of state. Just some numbers. Okay, these are 2006 numbers. So now 6 years after the initial declaration, and now about 40% of the way towards 2015. There's a billion people in the world who don't have clean water. 2.6 billion don't have adequate sanitation. They don't have toilets, they defecate openly. Just think about it, it astounds me. That's 75 times the population in Canada. And there's a whole bunch of things out here, but I just draw your attention to the final point. Half the people, when I read this really brought it home to me. Half the people in the developing countries, at any one time, half the people are sick because they don't have clean water. Okay? So imagine if you were sick half the time, how productive can you be?